This is chaos magic, Wanda. And that makes you the Scarlet Witch.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Stark Contrast. We are back for episode 4.
Episode 4.
Di, what do we got on today's to-do list?
So we've got quite a show lined up for you today. First and foremost, as always, thank you to our Patreon patrons. We have 3 new patrons this episode. So big thanks to Laura C., Robin, and Katie.
Thank you.
Super duper thank you. We just kind of reminder, we have stickers available. It's our logo. It was created by Cody Guerrero. It's pretty awesome. So if you want one of those or you'd love to support the show, please visit our links page and get a Patreon in other news, related news actually, we were wondering what kind of content should we offer to patrons? If you have any ideas, please let us know. We've done a few bonus cuts from the Spider-Man episode and we might have more to come, but we'd love to hear your suggestions. So
what you guys want to see or hear from us. We always just want to take care of our patrons, so let us know.
For sure. And then speaking of related audience news, I found out that we have listeners in Belgium and Canada now. So that's awesome.
Which is really wild to me still.
Mind-blowing.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. And then on the heels of that, I buckled and I ended up making a Facebook page, even though I didn't really want to. So we're officially on Facebook. You can find us at STRK. I always forget how to spell.
STRKCNTRST.
Thank you. No vowels allowed. Find us there and give us a like if you can. And so, if you didn't check out episode 3, we did Captain America, and that was part of the listener's choice. Mm-hmm. And so, of the choices of that group, Geoffrey drew dealer's choice, and he got to pick which character that would be. And of course, in true Geoffrey form, and for an endless love of Elizabeth Olsen, he chose Scarlet Witch. And so we immediately rolled into that after Cap.
Oh yeah, rightfully so. I love her. I cannot wait to discuss her on today's episode.
Yeah, and by proxy, a very good friend of mine who is tremendous in the podcasting, I don't know what you would call it, universe of sorts. I asked him, when Geoffrey and I started this show, I was kind of like, hey, if we ever do guests on the show, who's the character study that you'd like to jump on? And he was just like, Wanda, Scarlet Witch. I was like, okay, I got 2 of them. Perfect. I got 2 guys.
Yes.
So I would love for everyone at home to just give a warm welcome in your own way to Mr. Stephen Ray Morris. Woo! Woo! Hi, Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
I know, this is podcasting in person again is so fun.
Yeah.
Not that it wouldn't have been fun if I didn't, but
Yeah. Are we your second?
Well, this is my first as a guest.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, this is the first time as a guest
This is
in person.
Exciting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Because it's mostly been, which you've been on the Purrrcast in person.
Yeah.
Because it was 2 years ago,
Oh, yeah.
3 years ago?
No, it couldn't have been 3. It had to be 2,
Yeah,
which is still nuts, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So, it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
And then I'm also from Orange County, so it's just nice to...
to come back.
Yeah, to come back.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so, Stephen and I, we have so much in common, especially when it comes to pop culture. And he just started a new Star Wars podcast, Everything But the Movies.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. So please give that a listen as well. But we're big Marvel fans. And so, aside Geoffrey, I tend to talk about Marvel with Steven so often, it probably makes him sick of my text messages. But it's nice to have that sort of space to talk, have the dialogue. Yeah.
Well, but I feel like your podcast is like the perfect thing for someone like me, as somebody who didn't grow up reading comics, but is a big, like, the MCU has been around long enough that there are probably people like me who are fans of the MCU who've never read comic books, or at least or like me, who are bad at reading comic books, even though I try to.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at it. But yeah, it's like we live in a time now where there is MCU fans who like, I mean, specifically with our hero today, like it's like once you find out the stories that are like, you know, the amount of history, it's just like, whoa, like I'm sure there's so many people who are diving, like how many people bought House of M because of WandaVision?
Exactly.
You know, stuff like
Exactly. We were just discussing that before you came here. Yeah.
And it's true. And you know, for my notes alone, I was telling Geoffrey, like, there's so much to Wanda in particular. There's, you know, we always say this on, you know, for the other characters, that there's decades worth of lore that you kind of have to sift through and kind of, you know, every little nuance is important in some way. And especially in the MCU, because they're just riddled with Easter eggs, like every which way. And, you know, I'm sure when people were like, wait, this was actually something from the comics, when they, you know, watched WandaVision, they were probably like, well, no way. But then people who are familiar with it were like, House of M, like House of M, you know, and then I know that was what I thought first and foremost, especially when, I don't know if it was a breakdown video or somebody just made stills of the trailer and they showed the wine bottle with the M on it and everyone was like, it's House of M. I was like, it's such a tiny thing, but also maybe, like, and it ended up being, you know, kind of.
I mean, when I was watching WandaVision, there's definitely moments where I was just like, this is probably something big, like a big comic book reference, but I didn't know. And that's every time I didn't know anything, I texted Di. I was like, Di, what does this mean? Like, I know this is bigger than it's supposed to be. Like, for an example, was definitely White Vision. I didn't know how significant that was, but I knew it meant a lot. So I'm like, what is this? And then obviously thanks to Twitterverse and all the comic book people on Twitter, they were like, oh my God, that's White Vision. And I was just like, oh, this is a thing.
It's a thing,
I didn't know that was a thing, but good to know.
Well, and it almost seems too where it's like, I mean, it is, every character in the MCU has like such a rich history, and it must be interesting for like people who are viewing it for the first time, where you're like, oh, here's this side character, and then she gets like the fact that they're getting their own shows now. It's like obviously like a character like Scarlet Witch deserves that because she's been a main character in the comics. But like for somebody who's only seen, you know, a couple
Avengers,
Marvel movies, you don't know that these characters have the like enough to fill TV shows and movies and stuff.
Right.
I feel like it must be very cool. Like to me, it's very cool because again, like, I loved Scarlet Witch from day one, but I didn't really know any of all this either. So it was like, cool. I rooted for the right team. Because like I didn't realize, like I just liked Scarlet Witch as a character in Age of Ultron. I didn't know that she was going to become all this stuff. Like,
and that she had so much behind her that they were going to eventually like roll into also.
Because they hinted at it.
Yeah, they hinted at it.
She has so much baggage. And then the WandaVision just unraveled everything about her, and it was like, wow, there's so much to this character that we didn't know. And it was just amazing to see. And all the more reason why she deserved like a series of sorts, you know. And everyone the dialogue now is like, oh, so and so deserves a movie, so and so deserves a movie, and it's like, no, actually they deserve a series, because the series allows you to really dive into the stories, flesh it out in an episodic sort of way where they're getting a full-on hour each week, and a total of 10 or 8 in, you know, Falcon and Winter Soldier territory, where you're just like, that's way better than a movie, if you ask me. And even then, it's still almost not enough because you're left like unsatiated. You're like, no, I want some more.
Well, I wonder now, because we have been without a MCU film for a year and a half,
almost a year and a half, 2 years.
That it's like, I wonder how audiences are going to react to seeing like, you know, between Black Widow and Shang-Chi and Eternals, like, oh, we're only getting an hour and a half with these people. Like, what the hell? What a ripoff, you know? Like, I think too, and this is off topic for just a half second, but like, because I've been podcasting about it this weekend, the new Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous show, within like Jurassic Park has had 5 movies, so that's what, like 5 times 2, you know, 10 hours of content. Well,
the show
Camp Cretaceous in 6 months has already made 26 episodes.
Oh my God!
Divided by 2, like
20 minutes,
like over 12 hours of new Jurassic content and lore within the last 6-7 months. It's just I'm curious how people are going to react to like seeing movies again where things are only 2 hours, only an hour and a half.
True.
Especially Marvel movies, and you know how like crowds are always invested in.
So the investment is so
like,
it's crazy. Okay, so before we get too much further into this, as I always kind of mention in every episode, Geoffrey and I, we're not experts. We don't claim to be, like the trailer suggested, like the episode suggests. We're just a couple of nerds that are having these discussions and sort of, riffing on about the lore that exists both in the MCU and from comic books. And so we hope that you enjoy what we have to offer today. And so I guess we're going to dive into Wanda.
Let's do it.
But, actually before that, Steven.
Yeah.
What was your first introduction into comics or Marvel?
Well, with comics, I mean, really the first comics I ever had were Star Wars. Star Wars, I think, because it came with the Shadows of the Empire toys. Like, if you bought like this attack pack with Boba Fett and IG-88, you would get a comic to go with it.
X-Men did the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did the same thing. And it was because they were Kenner. I think they were Kenner toys
Kenner,
or something. Yeah. And so they had that card that had the 6-inch figure and then the comic book. Yeah.
But
nice.
I wasn't good at reading comics as a kid because I think I was such a it was the kind of thing where like my dad would make me like read for 2 hours every Sunday, or here you have to read this classic book before you can do anything else. But when I read comics, I was like, and even nowadays, like I keep skipping the pictures. I just read the text. I'm like, why did I finish this graphic novel in an hour? It's like, because you didn't look at the pictures. So I'm constantly having to go back and reread stuff. So like, I never really got Marvel comics or anything growing up. It really was like Star Wars and Jurassic Park. I mean, Jurassic Park had a Kenner or Topps run. I guess were they published by Topps?
Aren't you recollecting them now?
I'm trying to start collecting them because I want to get more into comic books. But and then it really wasn't until Scott Pilgrim where I tried to give comics in graphic novels because that was it was the heyday of, I feel like when Scott Pilgrim came out, it was the heyday of manga at Borders. It was that era of so many people. When I was in college, it was just everyone was at Borders, reading manga, reading comics, and Scott Pilgrim, I think, helped popularize it a little bit for Western audiences or whatever. And then when I moved to LA, I started going to a comedy show at Meltdown. So what was really smart, Kumail Nanjiani was going to be in Eternals. He hosted, him and Jonah Ray hosted a comedy show together that I went to for 4 years. So every Wednesday I was at Meltdown Comics, and their producer, Emily Gordon, who's incredible, who I look up to, she had a great idea as the producer of a comedy show. Because the show was getting so popular, the drop-ins were insane. And so, as a regular, you want to sit in the front and you wanted to guarantee that you got a good spot so you didn't stand in the back of the bonus space or whatever. So she basically was if you buy something from the store, you get to go in first.
Nice.
And it was just that's why she's a genius. But so basically I just started buying comics because of so it was just kind of this thing of as the MCU is growing, 2012 was when Avengers came out.
The first Avengers, yes.
Yeah, or the first,
expert. Timeline expert over here.
But so it was that thing of I would just constantly kind of look at okay, because I'm not as familiar with comics, it was just usually looking at things that's how I got into Miss Marvel, because that was when a run was going, and some Star Wars stuff here or there. But that's kind of when I started reading it. It's very sad though, because when my ex and I broke up, we had to split up that comic collection.
Oh no!
So,
oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Ouch.
So I think
that's my nightmare.
Came out okay, but it was that and the Meltdown posters. Those were the things that we just split up. But I'm truly just spending, because you'd also go an hour and a half early. Before, so get off of work and then drive to Meltdown Comics every Wednesday. So it was okay. Well, and then comics you could just read in line.
And it was New Comic Book Wednesday too. So that was another thing. So you'd get all the new books.
Yeah. So
that was the push.
But it truly. I mean, part of getting into comics was. Because I wanted to get front of the line for this comedy show.
But that's awesome.
Yeah, that was basically my intro. And then because also that was when the MCU was really ramping up in that way of connecting everything. It was kind of the perfect synergy.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite Marvel character?
I mean, Scarlet Witch,
really?
Truly, but
okay.
Nice.
Yeah. I would say Scarlet Witch.
I thought you were going to say Captain Marvel, to be honest.
I really did like Captain Marvel. I just don't think as far as MCU goes, there hasn't been enough of her yet to quite solidify her. I definitely rocked my like the Miss Marvel style version of her tee. Like for a while, there was like a year I wore that shirt all the time.
You're one of the only people that I know that likes Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Isn't she kind of like Tony Stark in the comics? Like she's more of a
She is.
Yeah, or like Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I watched that whole
animation. She's got a presence. She has a presence to her. And she's just such a strong embodiment of a woman in power of power. And so there are a lot of people that by that proxy alone, they're like not into it.
I saw all that Captain Marvel hate. I just did not get.
No, me neither.
I didn't get it. Besides, I mean,
and that's why,
half of it was just the fact that they don't like Brie Larson, and I'm like,
I don't get that either. I mean, she's a treasure, but it's just that like
I follow her on YouTube. She's amazing on YouTube.
She covered Blackpink. She has my vote.
Her and Sam Neill thrived as far as learning their guitar skills during ukulele skills during the pandemic.
That's
Both
amazing.
of them were like, this is just time to I'm an actor. I'm bored. I'm just going to play lots of music.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But Scarlet Witch I think is definitely my favorite.
Oh,
superhero.
interesting. Well,
nice.
All the more reason. So she was created in 1964 by the man, Stan the Man Lee, as well as Jack King Kirby. And she first appeared in X-Men #4. So back in the day, comic books were very sequential in that they dropped every month. Right. It changed significantly in this last year or 2 years because digital is taking over. Publications aren't printing as much. And so sometimes you can't even rely on a book to drop within 2 or 3 months now. Like there's this whole fiasco back in the day with a run that Kevin Smith wrote for Black Cat, and there was a period. I think the last issue didn't come out for 2 years for some.
But they kept the numbering.
Because they had to conclude that story, and it was so crazy. And I remember like being in the thicket of it. But back in the day, comics were every month, every single month, sometimes two a month if you were lucky. And that's not including like the subtitles and all of that, the arcs that were matching up. And so X-Men #4, so that was the 4th issue. 4 months into X-Men, they threw in the Maximoff twins. And so they were in it real early. And if you've seen the cover, it's like Magneto, and then the X-Men are like feuding off with them, and then Scarlet Witch is there and Quicksilver is next to her. But there's a funny thing when it comes to comic books of this era, like the Silver Age in particular. The colorists for covers were always on par with the interiors. And so I believe her suit on the cover is green.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so they just kind of
very interesting.
They just messed up a bit, but and it's funny because she's the Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so that happened. That was inked by Paul Reinman, and so aside that, so the twins in general, like, do you know anything about them beyond the MCU origins at all? Either of you?
I mean, I know that they're they were Magneto's kids, but then now they're not anymore in the comics or something.
Correct.
Or they were mutants and then they weren't. They've constantly been kind of
changed them.
Their origins have constantly changed.
Yeah, they changed them.
That's how I know them as Magneto's kids.
And so, like in the MCU, for instance, they come from Sokovia.
Yeah.
And so Sokovia is like this, mythical country. In the comics, they come from a place called Transia.
Okay.
The country of Transia that's in Southeast Europe. It borders Macedonia, Russia, and Serbia. And this one place in particular that's really kind of a pinnacle and very important part to the twins in particular is this place called Wundagore Mountain. And so...
that connection.
And so there's that connection. And so, not to go too deep into WandaVision immediately, but that scene of her at the very end in the last episode. Yeah. So there was speculation. Yeah. There's so much speculation of so Wanda's in a cabin near a lakeside with these mountains. Is it the mountains from... is it with the Weapon X program? Or is it Wundagore Mountain?
Yeah.
So now it's kind of are they gonna dive deeper into that whole origin story, or at least the continuity of Wanda's backstory that comes from Wundagore?
You gotta love Twitter speculation. Love
exactly.
it. Love it.
Twitter speculation.
Well, and I wonder if it must be hard or interesting for comic fans because when Disney acquired Fox, it's not like they really needed to change anything about what they were doing with like Iron Man or Captain America, but like acquiring Fox now has changed what they can do with Scarlet Witch. So I wonder if that had any effect.
Yeah, and you know, we kind of briefly touched on this for Captain America, but changing the story from enhanced to then potentially mutants.
Using the word
now
mutant,
that they can say mutant, they don't have to say people with special abilities or anything like that. I mean, like that could change the game for her in particular, you know, depending on which way they take it. But you know, that we'll get into that sooner than later. So I'm gonna look at the trading cards. So we do this thing where we look at the trading cards, and so, you know, funny enough, and I think it's because she is not she wasn't as prominent, maybe. She didn't have that many solo cards. Oh. So I have like 5 or 6 sets, and I was combing through them, and I could not for the life of me find a decent trading card with her on it. So there's this one with the Avengers of the West Coast. Do you guys know about the Avengers of the West Coast?
Yeah, mostly just from the speculation from WandaVision.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they just essentially, it's just a West Coast, you know, chapter of the Avengers where Tony was like, oh, well, I guess we got to take care of the Pacific too.
It's such a practical, because I feel like in superhero movies, it's like superheroes can do anything, and like the idea of like, well, here's just like, you know, here's like this local chapter. Like, it feels so much more grounded, and I'm sure, which was probably really cool at the time, because I feel like my knowledge, like the only knowledge I have of like early comic stuff was that like the Marvel superheroes were in the real world and they had real world problems. So it's like, it's such a cool, quaint kind of notion. So when people were speculating about WandaVision, it was just like, oh, well, now we've been doing this for so long that we can get into that kind of like more grounded stuff about superheroes that people loved about the original comics.
Exactly. So they took them out of New York. They put them on the West Coast. So that's one of
Did they have a choice? Were they like, I want to go live in California?
No, I mean, it's almost like a B team in a lot of ways, depending on which way you look at it. Because I do believe this is John Walker on this card.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's John Walker.
So wow, could they really try and do like West Coast, or at least a version of it in the MCU?
They could, like, honestly, because in this particular team, and this was 1992. Iron Man, U.S. Agent, Hawkeye, Spider-Woman, and I believe that's Julia Carpenter, not Jessica Drew. Wonder Man, Scarlet Witch, and Living Lightning. And so
I haven't seen Living Lightning yet.
He's very plain from the looks of it. It's got black and white. And so there are different iterations of that team as well, where, you know, like Mockingbird joined for a bit, and other characters, and so they like any team, they rotate people out. Depending on who's available.
6 months on the West Coast, 6 months on the East Coast.
Exactly. And then the other card I have is from the 93? I don't remember. Marvel 94 Marvel Masterpieces. And Steven, I know you know these artists, the Hildebrandt brothers.
Yeah. So.
They're just so iconic. And then, so I guess the one I'm going to read from, and it's not really reading anything in particular because there's no origin story on any of these. I feel cheated. But on the power scale of 1 to 5, apparently Scarlet Witch rates 2 in stamina.
Oh, okay. I was gonna be like, wait, what? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 in intelligence.
Interesting.
Which I'm like, below what? Okay.
Okay.
5 in mental powers.
All right.
Rightfully so.
Wait, but why two in intelligence and mental powers?
Those are kind of hand in hand, right?
I don't know, man.
Wow.
And then 3 in energy projection. And so, and it has her origin.
3 in energy projection?
Yeah. They were kind of tough on her on this one. But again, this is 1993. You know, she's come a long way since then.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's this Marvel rule of 5. So, you know, not many people follow it, let alone know about it, but it's every 5 years for us is 1 year in canon.
Oh,
so that's why they don't age and all that funny stuff.
They gotta keep, because at the age with the times,
exactly.
it would be like, oh my god.
Because we're obviously gonna.
Cap is like 300 years old at this point, then.
And so we're gonna cover X-Men later on down the line, but like essentially in the current timeline, X-Men are essentially immortal at this point. They have officially been given this like uploading system where they download the memories and they just create a new body, and boom, you lost Rogue. Well, she'll be back in 4 days. And so they have to figure out these ways of like immortalizing the characters, and so that was kind of like the cheat system of like, oh wait, no, it hasn't been 5 years, it's only been 1.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, but then you think about it in issue scope.
Yeah.
You're like, so you're telling me they had Infinity War and this and that in 7 months? And it's yeah.
Okay.
It's one of those. Okay, so pop quiz for you both.
Oh no.
Okay, this is fun.
These ones get me all the time.
And so this one is MCU based.
Okay.
And it's multiple choice. I chose MCU questions this time because I felt like I was grilling Geoffrey too hard. Okay, so take you back to Age of Ultron, or even Winter Soldier if you want. Who was the head of the facility where the Maximoff twins were being held? Was it Arnim Zola, Johann Schmidt,
Nice.
Silver Sablinova, or Wolfgang von Strucker?
Wait, do we have to buzz in?
Sure.
Well, I think we both know the answer.
Steven?
I forget what the letter is. D, I guess. Baron von Strucker.
Okay. Geoffrey?
Strucker.
Okay, that was too easy. It was von Strucker, who was portrayed by Thomas Kretschmann in the MCU. So that was see, this is why I choose comic book questions.
See, tweens. They're not the right.
The
tweens.
So
That was really good.
He has this like incredible way of quoting people from. Oh God, I can't get over
I'm
it.
going to surrender.
Well, I mean, that movie did get a lot of life again because Disney Plus was recommending it after every episode.
Yeah.
Smart. Those guys are smart. Because remember when that movie
smart.
came out, people were like, "Oh, this movie was like not that great for an Avengers movie."
No.
Or was it Avengers? It was
Avengers. Yeah.
But I'm like, now you watch it, you're like, "Oh my god, I love it."
Well, I remember when I did the. I think it was it Civil War? I did a movie marathon, and we went through all of the Avenger films, and I remember thinking, I'm gonna sleep during Age of Ultron because like I don't know if I can handle, and it was like it was the El Capitan, and so those seats are not comfortable.
Oh my god, I saw Infinity War at the El Capitan.
They hurt.
Oh my.
They hurt. And so I sat through the Avengers. I think it was for Endgame maybe. I sat through all the movies, and I was planning to fall asleep during Age of Ultron, and then I just like watched on review. You're kind of like, actually it's not that bad.
It's a solid.
It's not that bad. It really isn't.
Yeah.
I do miss Pietro still to this day though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it helps that they've kind of positioned it more as like, because Avengers is kind of like its own thing. It's like an origin movie, and then it's like if you think of Age of Ultron as the first chapter of, like Ultron, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, and it almost like works better like that because it's like, well, it's not the Avengers they start the movie together, they fall apart, and then they come back together. Like, so it almost works more in that sense. Like if you don't include the original Avengers as part of like the viewing or whatever.
Yeah. Do you remember your first reaction to seeing them at the end in the end credits of Winter Soldier? Either of you?
Oh, well, no, I thought it was awesome. I mean, I thought it was cool. It's like...
Did it immediately connect with you did you know the character at all at that point?
No, I don't think because that's the thing. Like, I love following movies, but some movies I like avoid set photos and stuff, and I just watch the trailers.
My boy right here.
But then other movies, I see everything, stuff with like Jurassic, or I do a thing where like I will keep up with something right until like a month before, like with Jurassic stuff, like obviously because I do a podcast about it. So like with Fallen Kingdom, I like, I don't read like super Reddit leaks or script leaks, but like anything that's official, and then like rumors and conversation and stuff. But with all the Marvel movies, because I wasn't a comics person, like I basically just watched the trailers and maybe saw a few set photos and stuff. So I didn't really know anything about it. Yeah. So I just was like, this is cool. And then I think because of like the imagery of like toys and that kind of stuff. So I think I just saw Scarlet Witch from afar and was like, oh, this character is intriguing.
Yeah. Same. I think I remember seeing that post-credit scene. I was just like, who are these people? I think I definitely got who Quicksilver was because it was pretty obvious, but I did not know.
So you knew who Quicksilver was, though?
I think I had like an idea of it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Scarlet Witch, I was just like, she moves things with her mind. cool. She looks powerful.
Yeah. Because I was thinking about this earlier today, and I was like, I can't even recall if they did like the casting reveal of like, Elizabeth Olsen is, and
I don't remember seeing any of that.
I don't think they did, right?
They did.
Yeah, and
that was a complete surprise.
Yeah, and so like during the midnight or for showing, and they popped up, I was like, oh, because I knew immediately.
Well, yeah, you knew who they were.
I knew who they were, and I was like, holy crap, they're bringing the Maximoff twins in. But it was also like stacked in between the whole Fox thing, so I was like, what does this mean?
How are they doing this? How are they able to do this?
Yeah, and so it was interesting, it's been interesting to see them kind of come up from that 30-second cameo, and then straight into Age of Ultron, then to Civil War, and then everything, and then now we have what's his name? What is it?
Ralph Boner.
Ralph
Boner.
Well, I was gonna say, I also feel like, and I wonder, like the sort of the contrast between, because I feel like when they finally revealed Wanda, and it was like, well, she's the most powerful like person, as like, I feel like that was a big selling point, but because they were so far from that at the start, it was just like, this person's supposed to be the most powerful person in the MCU, the most powerful person, or most powerful person in the Marvel universe. So you were just like, the humble origins. I mean, they were truly the most humble of origins for a character.
Yeah.
So to me, that also was like intriguing. So it was like this bit of like comic like flourish, and you're just like, oh, well, that's so different from what we're seeing now. Like I wanna, like I'm gonna like follow this person and see where they take it.
Exactly. And so, like, speaking of her powers, she's like she's a mastery of magic, and she has these. The reality warping is a big one. Of course, like we mentioned, she's got the telekinesis, and she's got all these crazy powers. And so we had a listener comment who said nothing more than, Wanda is a bad bitch with a heart. And so thank you to Marissa Dorame for that on Instagram.
Oh my God, that's my coworker.
Oh, is it?
Oh my God. She commented on nice.
Yeah, she did.
Hey, Marissa.
Hey. So yeah. Do you recall playing any video games with Wanda in it?
I've never played them.
Oh, really?
What was the side scroller like beat 'em up like arcade, like the Ninja Turtles, but the Marvel
the
version?
X-Men. It was the classic X-Men, and it had Dazzler, Colossus, Kitty Pryde, Cyclops, Storm.
But Scarlet Witch wasn't in that.
She was not in that.
No, okay. So yeah, I guess I've never played a video game.
Yeah, because I think by that era, she was still part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Oh, so she's
with
a bad
Magneto.
guy.
So if she was in the game, and I don't think she was, she would have appeared as
like a boss.
Yeah, she would have been boss, which would have been actually pretty cool, if you ask me. I was trying to think back on any games that she may have been in, and I think she's only been in like mobile games at least recently. Yeah, like I think she's in multiple. Ultimate Alliance 3 on Switch, and I think I have her there, and she's got a few of her, outfits, but she's like in the puzzle games. She's, like all of those kinds of games. I would love to see her in an actual like fighting game. Like if she was in
it'd be definitely
MVC.
interesting.
Yeah, right?
Or what if you did WandaVision, but you redid it instead of different TV shows, it was different video game eras. Ooh, so when she was a kid, it was like her playing with like a bootleg, like her dad brings her like a Sega Genesis. Because, I think... I think
Neo Geo.
in certain places, like you have the latest stuff, but like I was reading recently that like Brazil still makes Sega Genesises or something.
Wow.
But like, depending on, in like Sokovia, like where it's like more of a war-torn country, it's like you could see a world where they're like playing Sega Genesis, but like also have a cell phone and are playing mobile games. So you can have a thing where she like grew up playing all these different video game eras, so cool. And then you have like a video game where like it starts as like a
8-bit,
like an 8-bit like Atari, and then it moves to Nintendo.
That's an idea right there. Wow,
like that would be like, to me, if they wanted to like. Because, it's that thing of like anytime you make stuff with a certain character, you want it to like reflect the character. So like, how could you do a version of WandaVision as a video game?
Yeah. Well, now you've given the universe.
It ends in this big open world like thing.
Oh my
but then
gosh,
you could theoretically go to like an arcade and play all the old.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
That would be cool.
Oh my gosh.
I'm copyrighting this idea. Just kidding.
He's trademarking it right now.
Jack Schaefer, I'm coming for you.
Oh my God. So the Maximoff family and all of the people related in general, There are so many people in this family, it would make the Summers family jealous. And wow. I don't know how much you know about the Summers family, but there are a lot of people in that family tree. And so I tried to whittle it down to just the basics. And so Pietro, let's talk Pietro.
Rest
if you will. Rest in peace. Because I loved Aaron Taylor Johnson. I thought he was incredible in the role. And I'm sad that he only...
I mean, did they only kill him because the Fox thing and they were doing
they were doing
X-Men. Yeah, the Quicksilver in the X-Men movies. Did they only
Evan Peters?
But did they even acknowledge in the X-Men? Because I First Class was the last X-Men I saw.
Yeah.
Did they ever acknowledge that Magneto, because they had access to him, was Quicksilver's dad, or did they ignore that?
No, they did the thing where they kind of danced around it, but they never full on said. And so it's funny that you mentioned that, because I can't remember which one it was, but there's a shot of Peter, and that's another thing. So they had Peter Maximoff and then Pietro Maximoff.
Oh, interesting.
And so the Wanda and Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were part of this small pool of Marvel characters that if you were to see the Venn diagrams of overlapping properties, they were just weirdly off to the side where they didn't actually have any ownership. Nobody technically owned them, and they were just kind of like floating around. And so among that character pool is like Ghost Rider, Punisher, and so they kind of just sat there. And so it was almost like, I don't know how the rights went, but so that's why there's a Pietro and there's a Peter.
That's really funny.
Yeah, and it's not just Americanizing, you know?
Yeah. Well, was Scarlet Witch or like was Wanda in the X-Men at all?
She wasn't, but that's what I was about to say, is that there's one of the first scenes or in the movie, they show Peter and he's sitting watching a movie or watching the news, and I think it was Magneto on the news, which was ironic, and he had a small sibling on his lap, and she was dressed in red and pink.
Interesting.
And everyone was like
freaking out.
It's Wanda! But then they're like, but she's not the same age, so they're not twins. She's like 10. Like, what the heck? It came into that whole thing, and so there's so much speculation, and that was the internet, like, just going, crazy with it. But it was a nice little nod to the aspect, because in the dialogue of that scene, like, Peter even mentions like another sister in addition to the one that was with him. And so that kind of rolls me into Lorna Dane, if you know Lorna Dane at all.
No, that's the thing. It's like, I think again, what's interesting now about the MCU being as old as it is that you have more, it's almost like the Star Wars thing where like the family is the point, or there's no family at all. This is it's kind of cool now. We're getting into like multiple generations, and I think like Paul Rudd, Ant-Man's like daughter is going to be a big part of the next
Cassie.
Ant-Man movie. So it's almost it's like we're like maturing. So it's like I'm like, so far in like the MCU, we've seen like fathers, sons, daughters, moms. But when are we getting like cousins and nephews? You know what I mean? And like we're getting a cousin with She-Hulk, with Tatiana Maslany playing Bruce Banner's cousin.
Jennifer Walters.
Thank you. But it's just to me, it's like, it's always very like, it's always very fraught of like parents and kids, but it's like, when are we getting like cousins and nephews and aunts and uncles and stuff?
Yeah. And so Lorna in particular, she's the mistress of magnetism. You've probably seen a picture of her.
Wow, that's a great superhero.
Also,
that's a great name.
Polaris. Her name is Polaris, and so she's very much like, she comes from that lineage, because like she has his powers. Essentially, she has his powers, but she is a half sister, so she has a different last name, different mom.
Okay.
But like you mentioned before, they've kind of futzed around with the twins and their parentage. So. That's kind of not a thing anymore. Sorry. But she was also she's in the Foxverse. She was in the Gifted show. She was the girl with the green hair. Do you remember seeing any of that? And she's pretty much a badass in the show.
I don't even remember what that show was. Like, I never saw it, but like, what was it on Hulu?
No, it was on Fox.
Wait, The Gifted. Oh, The Gifted was
with the guy from True Blood.
Right? Yeah. Okay, I
remember that. And then
the
family ended up being superhuman, and it was during the Mutant Registration Act and all that kind of stuff. And so she was in that show, and she was kind of like the anti-hero and bad girl personality, who made jokes about the father that they couldn't ever bring on the show.
Yeah, they couldn't name,
So I wonder, like with all that said, like I wonder if the acquisition has really changed course, like you said. Like, is that officially changing the way that they're going to evolve the characters versus what they were originally going to do? We don't know. And then, of course, there's Tommy and Billy, who we know and love now from WandaVision. Do you guys know how they kind of came to be?
Well, I think that's like, again, I started watching like New Rockstars and a lot of those speculation stuff.
Same, yeah.
Literally was listening to New Rockstars on the way down here.
Oh, really?
But so that's where I learned about Mephisto and the cover with the kids, like as the fingies. I don't know why I said fingies, but it just felt right in that moment. Like the soul kids is like of the devil's fingies.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the devil's hands are idle playthings, so it makes sense that they'd be like kids. But
totally
like,
makes sense.
Yeah, so I kind of learned all that stuff more recently. Again, it's like if you saw Scarlet Witch in, and I wasn't also part of the deal too, because they weren't called Scarlet Witch or Quicksilver. Like Scarlet Witch was first said in WandaVision. Like they literally, and I wonder if that was part of the.
I had to have been. I think while I was doing my
it makes sense.
Yeah,
like it makes sense.
Yeah, they couldn't necessarily say the name, and maybe that's because they called Peter Quicksilver though, didn't they? Or no? Maybe
I don't know.
They didn't.
I was under the impression they didn't.
You've barely even seen them, but. I don't think maybe they just called him Peter the entire time, now that I think about it.
Like
the X-Men ones?
The X-Men ones, yeah.
I've never seen any of the X-Men ones. I've watched the two Quicksilver scenes though.
Oh yeah.
Same.
On YouTube.
They're iconic, yeah. But that's definitely part of it. And that's why I think for me personally as a fan and the kind of fan I am, it made it so much more fulfilling.
I think, that's how I see it, yeah.
Because people were like, why don't they call her Scarlet Witch? Why does everybody else have a superhero name? How come they just keep calling her Wanda? And then you finally get it, like when Agatha says it, and I know you're going to freaking quote it in a second. When Agatha says the name and you get the whole idea that she's been imbued with this entity, it's like...
Yeah, I didn't realize they hadn't said it until like Agatha said it, and I was like, "Wow, that was very satisfying." She said it.
Yeah. How did she say it, Geoffrey?
She says it like, "This chaos magic, Wanda, that makes you the Scarlet Witch."
I don't know why the Lord of the Rings theme started playing, but like, it just, to me, that's one of those iconic when they say the title.
And just roll credits.
Exactly. And it's crazy. Yeah,
well,
it's crazy to think of.
And it's funny because I felt like they benefited from that because the MCU had kind of avoided everyone just called, nobody was calling everyone by their superhero names, which I feel like they benefited from doing all the Spider-Man stuff where everyone was like, oh, we're using our made-up names. Like, I feel like it kind of worked in their favor, but like you said, I didn't realize, like, probably even for me, like, I definitely know for me, like, it was cool, but I didn't even realize how satisfying it would be for comic fans.
And I appreciate it a lot more because it, much like the MCU is doing to their characters, it keeps them grounded. Like, you're not calling them by their superhero comic book names, and you're like, I don't know if that, like, does that seem weird? But then she's like, hey, Cap, Tony, Nat, and you're like, that's their names.
Imagine if, like, Widow walked into a room, or even better, if Vision walked into the kitchen and was like, Scarlet Witch.
It would take you out of the scene pretty quickly, so I'm kind of glad that they adjust everybody by it.
What did they do in the DC movies? Because I honestly haven't seen... I think I saw Suicide Squad, the original. That was the last DC movie I saw.
They call them by their names. They
like
Harley, Diana. Deadshot. I hear Diana all the time. Diana, Bruce. Yeah, she says Bruce. Yeah, they call them by their names.
Arthur.
They call him Arthur, not
even Kal-El. Yeah, they'd be like Kal.
Yeah, they don't call him Superman.
So they kept it pretty grounded too. It's just over the top superhero stuff.
I guess maybe it is easier to do it in a comic.
Yeah.
But do they even do people call the characters their superhero names in the comics, or do they also say?
I think they do a little both. Maybe maybe in modern times it's probably less prominent of them calling by their fake names or their made up names. It just depends on the relationship that those two characters have.
Sure.
Makes sense too, yeah.
Which like if you read Vision, for instance, he had a modern title. It was really, really good. Oh, God. And if he ever gets a spin-off show, they should base it off of that comic, and I should look up the writer. But, the relationships in there, they call each other Wanda and Viz. Like, not even Vision. He's Viz, like he is in the show, which is cute because it's endearing and short and all that stuff. So back to Tommy and Billy. So the whole speculation of the Mephisto thing came because of the comics, and they're quite literally shards of Mephisto's soul, which is, you know, for Wanda, that's as if she didn't have enough grief in her life. That's soul crushing. And so Mephisto in the books is just, he's basically a mischievous devil type. He was in, but his son, I believe it's his son, was in Marvel vs. Capcom. He was Blackheart. He's that tall, spiny, devil-looking thing that turns into a puddle sometimes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a spawn. And so I get where the whole hype of, oh, is she Mephisto? You know, Agatha, or is
every week Twitter went crazy with that. Oh my gosh.
And then like, is Evan Peters Mephisto? And
is
then
everyone Mephisto?
Yeah, everybody.
And then there was
no Mephisto.
Not at all. Credits to the writers for just straying away from that storyline.
Exactly. And then we're gonna roll into Magneto, because why not? So like I mentioned before, they appear with Magneto in their very first book. He's essentially, at that point, he's the leader of the Brotherhood of the Evil Mutants. He's just here to wreak havoc and go against the X-Men. And so the twins were kind of in it, like, almost confusedly, because they were like, we don't agree with your ideas, but we're going to follow this man. And then he started saying that he was their father.
Oh,
like, you're my children. And they were like, okay.
Oh.
And so, they kind of just went with it. And then after a while, they started to rethink their alliances, because they, innately were not bad people.
Yeah.
They were just misled and told to do things under Magneto's ruling thumb. And so eventually they broke off. They did their own thing for a long while. And then Cap, being Cap, was like, hey, why don't you join the Avengers?
Of course.
And then they jumped ship and they went over to the Avengers Tower. And that's how they became part of that whole thing.
That whole mess, yeah.
Beautiful
mess.
Nice.
Yeah, and so like the whole, oh gosh, I don't even know how to even dissect it. But yeah, the Magneto thing, it was so interesting because for decades and decades, they were understood to be Magneto's children.
Yes.
And so that explained why they had powers, because they were clearly mutants. And then, as Stephen mentioned earlier, there came a time where they just decided to, you know what, we're going to scrap that idea. And we're going to concentrate more on the genetic side, which is also what we kind of see in the movies.
Yeah.
So they're more of genetic anomalies than they were born with these talents and such. And so that all takes place in Wundagore Mountain, and that's again that's the whole.
But WandaVision did suggest that Wanda was born with those powers.
The powers,
and the stone just
because
enhanced
of her mother too, right? Yeah.
So now it's like, oh.
Yeah. And now, do you think that is more of a power thing or a sorcerer lineage thing?
It's very tough.
Because you think of the Wiccan, sort of.
Yeah. And now she's going to be in Doctor Strange too.
And she's going to be in Doctor Strange.
Like,
is she a sorcerer? Is she just... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'm very curious to see where her story continues, because when WandaVision ended, we now know, like, oh, she is powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we don't know the limit to her powers. And obviously with her reading the Darkhold at the end, spoiler alert. So who knows? And she's learning that on her own.
Yeah, exactly.
So who knows where that ties into Doctor Strange? And...
Here's a question for you: Do you think that WandaVision is the last that we'll see of the House of M effect, or do you think that it's going to continue or even get crazier in Doctor Strange 2?
Well, yeah, I guess it's because again the speculation said that we were going to see all this stuff in WandaVision, which we didn't see any of it, obviously. So it's like, I almost imagine, and well, it's interesting because I just saw like. That Benedict Cumberbatch was supposed to be in WandaVision, and they scrapped all of his stuff that was going to be in it because they obviously said they didn't want it to overshadow or anything like that. But it almost makes me think that because again, it's like it's just that thing of like we want to see the thing, and I wonder because it's Doctor Strange too, and Wanda's going to be like it's one of those things where I'm like, how much of a co-star is she going to be in it? So I wonder if they're just gonna jump ahead, so the thing opens like with House of M, and that because it's like since they didn't do any of it in WandaVision, are they just gonna and because it's a movie, so like more people are going to see it. So are they just going to open up with her? And it's like, but I mean, also it's that thing of like, would they reveal Magneto? like
right off the
right at this, like, it just feels like that would be so much. So it's almost like, what is the story of Wanda in Doctor Strange 2? Because otherwise I feel like isn't that movie going to be about like everyone helping her find reality again? So it's like, are we just not even going to see it at all?
But then who was the reported villain? I saw like
Shumagorath.
Yeah, so I saw that. So it's like, okay, so where is this story ultimately gonna go? Like, is Wanda gonna play like a role like Tony did in Civil War? Or is this like a jump off point for her?
We're such industry of like, we're like very practical. Like, how many days is she shooting? Like, that gives me an idea.
She was in London for a very long time.
Jeffrey knows.
She was in London.
But that's
Jeffrey
what I mean.
knows.
Like, it just, to me, it's like, I'm the type of speculating person where it's like, I have to like, because of just working in the industry and then also just growing up, like I didn't realize there aren't people who read like Collider or IO9 every day. Like, there aren't people that follow movie news, like, or this kind of stuff. And so for me, it's like speculating for me is very much like based on like, like how long is somebody in there for, like that kind of thing. So like if Wanda is like a co-star of Doctor Strange 2, that makes me more hopeful for, those kind of things like House of M or whatever. But if it is just, she's like, I'm trying to think of the equivalent of like what it would be like, where if somebody's only in like the first half of the movie.
Peter Parker.
Because
in Civil War.
Like
they introduced him, he did his thing, and then he bounced.
Or even more of like, or I would almost wonder if maybe she's more of like a Chadwick Boseman like level in Civil War. Where like he gets a little, because Spider-Man's like he gets one or two scenes and then he's fighting.
Black Panther.
Whereas Black Panther, he had, like the death of his father. Like there was more
he had
meat
his
to
own
that
story in Civil War.
Like I would almost like, to me that would be really cool if Elizabeth Olsen had that level of, because it would also be unsatisfying if she was only like in the beginning or at the very end or something.
Just like a little.
Like I hope she has like her role goes all the way to at least the second act, maybe like a little bit of the third act, but it's still at the end of the day a Doctor Strange movie. Much like how Civil War was a Captain America movie. So you can't stray too far from that storyline. Else it's going to be like, this is just an Avengers movie now. So.
Well, especially given it's multiverse.
Yes, exactly.
God knows who's going to show up.
Well, it seems like every movie is going to be an Avengers movie from now on, because I forgot that they cast America Chavez. That character is going to be Doctor Strange. So it's like, oh, well, but that's what I mean. It's like, and I feel like, again, this is such a like quick side tangent, but it's like when people are complaining there are too many characters, it's like, well, because we're not used to this formula where it's like you have all these people who are main characters in other movies, but but what I think is cool is that they can be a side character or a smaller character in another movie. It's like a TV show, where it's like not every character is the main character. Like a show like Mad Men or something, like some seasons feature another characters more prominently than others. So it's like, I love that we could get Wanda in Doctor Strange, and maybe she's important for like 2/3 of the movie, but then she can go away and then do something else. It's like,
then he can focus on his own like continuing storyline.
It's kind of like I mean, like how Black Widow has been utilized throughout the MCU, where she can be like co-star for a little bit and then maybe just show up for a little bit here. Like I don't know, I love that stuff.
Credits to Marvel Studios for allowing that to do that.
Well, and even the actors being like, I'm totally fine just showing up for a couple minutes in this movie, being a star here, and then showing up for a couple minutes here. And like, I mean, even getting Chris Evans to just do that video at the end of Spider-Man. Like that just, to me, it just brings so much texture to this stuff. Where it's like,
absolutely.
I feel like, I mean, I wonder as a comic fan, is this like, does that make the MCU, or is that another reason why the MCU is as rewarding as it could be? Because I feel like if it wasn't as successful, it's like we wouldn't get those kind of things.
Right. Yeah.
100%.
For me personally, I feel like I'm the kind of fan that's just like, I'm just happy to see some semblance of something that, even if they don't go full on with that concept. And the Halloween episode of WandaVision is a great example. Like, I didn't need to have Elizabeth in the red and pink suit at all times. Like, I have the pop of it right there, just because I love it so much. But like whereas there were fans that were like, "Where's her headpiece? Why isn't she wearing a wimple? Why isn't she wearing this? Why
is that what it's called?
It's called a wimple.
A wimple.
Yeah, and well, that was the OG one where she had, it was kind of like this crown, but it also came down.
Oh, okay.
And it came down under her chin, and then they kind of cut that part out and they just left the crown part. And so like people were complaining like they didn't get that suit, and I was like, did you learn nothing from X-Men? And so and so like seeing things like that, and or just these little nuances of them pulling material from the books, like that's so satisfying to me. And I don't think I complain about it like some other fans might, where they're just like, oh, Civil War, there were no X-Men, it's not Civil War, you know? Whereas I was like, Civil War, okay, cool, I recognize that name, I know that story. It wasn't the same story, but it was cool to see their version of it. You know,
I mean, the idea that in WandaVision, in the first couple episodes, we get characters from Age of Ultron, from Thor, a grown-up version of a character from Captain Marvel, utilizing things mentioned in Spider-Man. Like it's like the fact that all
Jimmy Woo,
Jimmy
and Ant-Man as well too.
Yeah.
The fact that like all of those things, it's like it's just such a nice cocktail of like everything that I think that's why the MCU has been so successful.
Yeah, and it's funny because that kind of even. And this makes me hopeful for the return of characters like Jessica Jones and Daredevil, because there's this kind of deep cut from somebody on Tumblr that the Netflix universe, of course, and I think that's Earth 19999 or something. But so they're all technically parallel universes still. But there's a throwback, and they, you know, again, like Jimmy Woo, for instance, like you bring him back from Ant-Man and now he's in WandaVision. And so they have these characters that are recurring, you know, like presences in different stories, but they're all the same story overall. But in Netflix, so they kind of toyed with that too, which I'm actually very impressed by. And so there's this line that the Purple Man says to Jessica Jones, and he's like, you know, he's trying to coerce her back onto his side. His power is persuasion. And he's like, oh, you know, come with me. We'll have some Chinese food around the corner and in this great spot that has Szechuan. And she's like, blah. And then later on, and that was like Jessica Jones season 1, I think. And then in Defenders, all of the Defenders are having dinner at a Chinese place. Jessica's the only one not eating. And then they threw it back, and I was like, oh my God.
Well, that's why, like,
it's so crazy.
When there was speculation about Falcon and Winter Soldier, or Falcon and Winter Soldier, of like the idea that there's that they're not evil, I guess, but they're like the
Flag Smashers.
No, what's the team? The Thunderbolts or whatever that people have been talking about. And it's like the idea that like there could be like a collection of bad guys that are still alive from across multiple MCU shows. It's like, I want Catherine Hahn and Daniel Bruhl. Like, how cool would it be to see those two, to see Agatha and like, oh my God, why can't I remember his name right now? Zemo. Like, to imagine them. Like, I just want a scene of like all the bad guys talking shit about the Avengers. You know what I mean? Like, how cool would that be? Because we're so used to like all the heroes together, but it's like, I feel like now we're at a point where there's enough alive villains.
Well, especially if they're pulling from the Spidey-Man.
Nice.
Spidey-Man. Oh my God, the Spider-Man.
I got thingy stuck in your head. But I mean, like, but like that level absolutely. Of like, I think if anything, like, I feel like WandaVision kind of like paved the way for like, to me, what I assume like comic people love a lot is that because like comic people have had this stuff for years or decades at this point.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. Do you think that Wanda has the capacity to be sort of the anti-hero villain in Doctor Strange, or do you think it's more of a, an apprentice sort of ordeal?
Well, I originally thought she was going to be the villain.
Really?
Yeah.
What about you, Jeff?
I was like leaning toward the way that WandaVision ended, and I'm like, oh, okay. I think she might be like an anti-hero. Like we were talking about this earlier. Like she's like on this anti-hero kind of path. Yeah,
well, it's because that line that Monica feeds her too, where she's like, don't let them make you the villain, and then she's like, maybe I already am.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think ultimately it will be anti-hero because I feel like unless they're planning on killing off Wanda in that movie.
We talked about that too, but I was just like, but she seems almost unkillable in any capacity.
But and people really responded to WandaVision, so it's like I don't think they're gonna make her the full villain and then kill her off. Like and then I guess in my understanding of the comics is like, isn't she even like more more evil, and also isn't everyone more of a to her in the comics too?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, she's constantly like, and unfortunately this is kind of a byproduct of like women in comics in general. And so, for instance, I was creating the image for the episode, and Geoffrey was like, oh, now I see what Lizzie was saying about the cleavage thing, because like, when they draw Scarlet Witch in the books, she's either like got 90% of her flesh showing, or like she's got boob socks, what we call boob socks, is when like the artist accentuates the breasts, even though she's wearing something that should not articulate the shape whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so, and speaking of, I know somebody mentioned something about about the getup, and so I'll get into that right after. And so based off of, like male writers, male artists, and all that, I feel like that just kind of compounded on top of the idea of Scarlet Witch. And also, and we see this in the show, she's very much it's like a mental health character where she's just suffering, and she suffered so much.
She's literally lost everybody. And so like, and the
whole thing with House of M in particular is that, you got to remember, this is, after the Magneto thing and just her life in general, she's lost vision at some point, maybe 4 times by then.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then the toaster always, and then she loses her children, and the children are part of Vision, and so that whole thing, and so she decimates like mutants. She's just like, no more. No more. Yeah. And so, and it's all based on the fact that she's just been she's lived nothing but traumatic events over and over again. And I almost feel like the MCU, like, it's almost like a tenfold, because she lost her brother. She didn't lose her brother in the comics, and Pietro's still running around being a jerk. So, and so it's so sad to see it visually too. I was just like, and I said this to many people, I was like, every week it made me cry. Every week. Because I was like, oh my gosh, I feel it.
Yeah, going back to the like where there's gonna be like a hero or a villain in Doctor Strange, I think also like another telltale in the show was when she went back into the city after like she said bye to Vision and everything, and everybody of the town was like looking at her weird, like saying like usually when you see superheroes are like, thank you for saving us. But this time the town was like, dude, we've seen like your pain, we felt your pain, and like now, and it's like, so it's like we're talking about like when it comes to like the public seeing like these heroes as like, I don't know if I can like trust you, I don't know if like I want you as my hero.
Yeah, exactly.
So that can maybe tie into how she's portrayed in Doctor Strange too.
Yeah, but absolutely.
It's crazy.
Like I mentioned earlier, somewhere down the line, the whole clarification of their origin comes to play, and how they're no longer Magneto's children, but they have this own split of their parentage, and they did come from a couple, with the last name Maximoff. And that it's genetic tampering. So there's this character in the comics called the High Evolutionary, and so he was like an ordinary guy or a lad because he's from the UK, and he's really into genetic tampering and doing all of that stuff. So I wonder if like Von Strucker, for instance, was kind of like a play on that character. I keep doing hand things because I'm very inspired today. So the Lizzie Olsen hand thing is taking over. But there's this High Evolutionary character, and so that whole, it changed the origin. So I wonder if Marvel, or at least Marvel Studios, will use that storytelling and the acquisition of Fox to kind of further that. And does that then directly impact the X-Men?
Yeah.
Like if like you say, if it starts out with House of M and she's just like, what is she going to say? No more mutants? Is she going to do that? And then that's how they're introduced in the next film or whenever they show up. They're like, okay, so we have no powers. Whose fault is this? Yeah. And then it ends up being like that tangle. But I don't know. I feel like the X-Men are so far out that they might not even be affected by anything.
Yeah, well,
Wanda.
Yeah, and I wonder too, like, again, think like, the MCU has just introduced things. Do you like? I think with mutants, it's like, do you say they've always been there, or do you actually create mutants in real time? Mm-hmm. But it's like, I think as like movie fans, you struggle with that because you're like, well, if Wolverine was around the whole time,
why can't you just bring him in?
Yeah, it just, to me, it's like I would rather them start fresh. You know, I would rather it be because of something that, you know, and I think again, like just watching like Nerdist and New Rockstars videos all the time. It's like, what if they, because I feel like the MCU, like when I watch that kind of stuff, the speculation things, it always seems like the MCU is always doing like the reverse of whatever the comics are doing. Like they do a flip on it, like with the Skrulls and the Kree stuff. So it's like what it like. I feel like the conversation at the time was, instead of saying no more mutants, she says mutants. So she actually creates the mutants instead.
I like
so it's
that.
Like they keep flipping the concept. They keep subverting the expectations.
That was a straight up like kombucha meme face. You were like, actually. Yeah, that would
because she's like, I'm tired of being alone. I'm going to create a whole thing of people.
Oh my God, Steven, you're genius.
I mean, again, credit to all those credit to all those videos, but it's just like, but you know, I think it's that thing of like Kevin Feige knows how to like. Yeah. It's weird because I feel like, yes, there are people who like complain about the like the nitty gritty stuff, but I feel like sometimes the MCU is really good at people almost. It's not that they like think that the changes are better, but it's like, well, but like people are more willing to engage with those changes in some ways. Like people who are like, no, it was supposed to be this way. Oh, that's interesting. Like, like
that's me. Know. That's me right there.
Yeah.
I'm that kind of fan.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just showing like an appreciation for the material that is beyond. Like, it's not trying to change things from the book just to like change them for their own. Like, oh, I just have to change things to make it different. It's more of like somebody who's sat and thought about the comics for such a long time, and they're like, oh, what if the you know, Skrulls were the good guys, you know? And it's like, so now people are like comic people, or like people who are more, you know, they liked it this way, are now willing to engage with it. Where it's like, I think maybe because Star Wars doesn't have like, there's probably more like the level of comic and MCU fans are probably more even, whereas like the people who read expanded universe Star Wars stuff are so much lower than the people who actually watch the movies. So the people who read the books are like, oh, well, like now Luke is a hermit and he didn't meet Mara Jade, and he, you know, it's like and they just won't hear it. You know, they don't, like, to them it's like the sequel trilogy doesn't exist because it's like, but also I feel like, and maybe this is just a joke about comics, but or even just with Wanda's origin of how it's changed a few times. So it's like comic fans are like, I've been to this rodeo before. Like, I can't get too mad if they change something. Like,
I think so.
You guys are more hardened, you know, battle tested, whereas like Star Wars fans are like they got rid of Mara Jade, no, you know. But it's like, I mean, they're finally starting to throw stuff in from the expanded universe back in once they. Because
the new shows.
Well, and I guess my question, this is a more general question about comics, but like, things are retconned and changed over the time. There's never been like there's never been a literal meta start over.
No, but DC has done that.
They've done an actual literal
well, I mean, yeah, in so many words, they did like New 52, and so they rebooted everybody, and then everybody hated it. So then they rebooted the reboot.
Wow. Well, because even with like, I've been getting into Mortal Kombat lately, like they rebooted the story, but everything before still counted and still sort of happened.
Interesting, yeah.
But yeah, so like Marvel, it's like they just retcon stuff to
they retcon stuff, and so they just rewrite the history in some sort of way, or reintroduce like a concept that really hadn't been fleshed out fully. And so I feel like this actually is the best representation of something that they full on went back and were like, actually, the Magneto stuff, just kidding. We're gonna,
interesting.
I honestly, like, thinking about it now, I kind of feel like it is, because for so long and for so many decades, and I think that's why I personally don't even have a lot of Scarlet Witch stuff, is because she was always a villain of sorts to me. You know, growing up, you know, she was always Magneto's girl, and then just, you know, further on here in modern times, they finally flipped the script and they're like, no, we're gonna separate her from that narrative and give her her own story.
Oh, cool.
Which is fantastic, because, you know, since then she's had her own story, she's had her own books, she's had her own standalones, and she's been in Vision's book, you know, and they've created these incredible, you know, stories and add-ons to their lore that is like, yeah, you know what, actually this is more worthwhile than it was just being like, I'm Magneto's daughter, you know, like, well, and therefore, and that's why people were like connecting the suit, like that's why she wears red, because it's her dad, but it actually didn't have anything to do with that. It was all the magic and the Scarlet Witchness of it. Yeah.
Because it's like, there's like the Nintendo school of like, I don't know, like it's not like any of the Mario story. Like there's not going to be like Legend of Zelda. Obviously they've like worked into this like multiple timeline situation, but like with Mario, it's just every Mario is. There's no meta. There's no meta lore or meta lore where it's like, like there's no like. I mean, maybe somebody on YouTube has done a thing with Mario where they're like, here's how Odyssey relates to Sunshine or whatever. But like, it's, I guess maybe that's why I like Scarlet Witch a lot too, because it's like, there's just so many, I don't know. She's been a lot of different things, which is kind of cool. I like the idea that she's kind of started as a villain,
Yeah, exactly. And so I wonder if we're going to really see that. And so like that, again, that last vision of her, no pun intended, with her with her in the book, like it's so haunting to me.
It's scary.
Just because you can't, and this is obviously on purpose. You can't really tell. Is she doing it for good? Is she doing it for personal reasons? Is she really kind of going into the dark side of things?
Which is what I love. You can't tell.
You can't tell.
All she cares about is her kids.
It's the kids.
That's
and
all
the kids
she cares
are the
about.
big thing. And again, that's a huge thing for House of M. It's all because she wanted the children back, and so it's like, oh man, she's about to wreak some havoc.
How they come back too? I'm very interested to see.
I'm dying to see that.
Are they going to come back as the actors that played it in WandaVision, or are they going to like age them up again?
And I have a theory because of characters being introduced like Kate Bishop and America Chavez and Tommy and Billy. They all come together and they create the Young Avengers in the books. So they're already setting us up for phase 29. You know what I mean? And so I think they're going to be completely different actors by the time we see them next. And they're going to have something resembling their actual costumes. Because they already did, and we talk about this in every episode, that there's a maturity to the costumes, to the looks of the characters, aside from the obvious growth that they're experiencing throughout the stories. And so I think they've already covered the Billy and Tommy stuff. Like they did the homage to Quicksilver and Wanda, and they did the little headband with the cape. And in the comic books, they look like that. Like Tom, I don't know which one. Tommy looks like Pietro, and he's got a suit that looks like Quicksilver's, and then Billy, his name is literally Wiccan in the books. And so, and they're both teen boys, and and I think that's a perfect segue to kind of bring them back, but as older children.
Well, because I guess by the time Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness comes out, Hawkeye series is presumably airing this fall.
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah.
December, I think.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I think it's December.
I don't know any dates.
I think it's right before Spider-Man, so maybe November.
Oh, okay.
November.
Yeah, and then we'll get... What else? What else? You were saying one of the other characters... Well, America Chavez is Doctor Strange too, so it's like... Yeah, if they already... Yeah, it almost wouldn't make sense to keep them young because it's...
Yeah.
Then they couldn't do that. But also... Because Doctor Strange is next summer?
Next summer. Next
summer, I believe. We're getting so much content. So this year alone, we're getting so much.
Yeah.
Well, I just find it hilarious that people were saying Marvel fatigue, where it's like,
he said the same thing too.
I was like, shut up, guys. We you don't have to see these things, but also like.
But what a time to be alive.
But also Marvel is like, joke's on you. Like, people were complaining about 3 Marvel movies a year. We're going to get, 4 or 5 series by the end of this year and 3 movies?
It's so good.
Marvel was like, you guys don't even know.
Yeah, and people are going to watch it because people are already too heavily invested.
Yeah,
like,
it went from there's too many Marvel movies to I need a Marvel movie. And then the shows were finally dropping, and then everyone was like, okay.
Yeah, and the 2 shows dropped, and everybody loved it.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And so we have to go back to the whole outfit thing.
Oh, yeah.
So this is from Laura C., and she starts out, Steven! With a purple heart.
Yes.
Question for everyone. How much do you love Wanda's new superhero getup? Elizabeth Olsen had talked about how she doesn't like showing a lot of cleavage, and I squealed when she showed up in the new gorgeous outfit. And so we kind of talked about the boob socks already. And so no boob socks. That's cool. That's great. But yeah, I do remember Elizabeth stating how she didn't want the focus to be on her lady bits. Which I totally appreciate.
Yeah,
because again, growing up as a female fan in this kind of fandom, over sexualizing women is something that's like omnipresent.
What is the guy who drew the Rob Life? Is it Rob?
Rob Liefeld.
Like his whole thing of like how physically impossible those drawings are. Like people are like
with the Captain America.
Yeah, where his like chest goes out to like
Jesus,
drawn like a big square.
And then somebody photoshopped both. I was going to say Steve Rogers, Chris Evans, and Anthony Mackie in that form.
Oh my
gosh.
Like, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And so it kind of goes the same for women, where they're just super duper accentuated again.
Broken ankles.
Like she can't possibly bend her back that way.
Wasn't there like the Hawkeye thing where they were like, where it's like, they keep even like photoshopping. I think they've even done it in the MCU where it's like the way that they've made like Scarlett Johansson like turn, like her spine would be broken because you're seeing her and her face. And it's like that's not how that. So like they were doing a thing where they were doing that to like Hawkeye. I think, or something like that.
God. You know. And so I love the final outfit.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Is that your favorite, Jeff?
Or
do you like the other ones?
Well, no, I think that's my favorite. Just because, I think we've talked about this before. Like costumes. If that was in the Cap episode, costumes are their own character arc in these movies. So seeing her go from Nat's red jacket,
hot topic.
Nat's red jacket to having her own just her own costume, like for her, but still keeping the aura of the comic book costume, but in MCU modern times.
Yeah.
I thought it was just amazing. Yeah. And then that crown that she has, it's perfect. Yeah. I love it.
Your love is
and then
showing.
Also people notice on Twitter that there's a thing in the center, and it's a resemblance of Viz's stone.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. So if you look at the intricate design of the cut of her collar, I believe it was Andy Park. Andy Park is huge. So, and Andy Park, I go way back, not personally, but I go way back with Andy Park because he used to draw the Tomb Raider comics.
Oh, wow.
And so I got into him way early on. So when he segued as one of the art supervisors for the MCU, I was like, wow, this guy's he's really versatile because he went from drawing like comic book style to doing these beautiful lifelike portraits of concept the characters and concept art. Yeah. And so when he designed Wanda's final suit in WandaVision, that middle sliver is an exact replica of the Mind Stone. Oh, wow. So, or whatever version of that is that Viz has by the end of the show, and so that's awesome. I almost want to see her with a cape. Like, I kind of want to see it just because Doctor Strange's cape is so cool.
I think it's going to come full circle in Doctor Strange.
You think?
It might show up with a cape at the start.
Maybe,
It'd be so cool.
Yeah, I think the point is, like, I think it's that thing with movie stuff where it's like, yeah, these costumes should exude power. They shouldn't be...
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, and this may be just like a meta thing of like, I don't want to look at a movie and I don't want the characters to look like they're embarrassed to be in those costumes.
Yep.
And I feel like... And maybe because of this like roundabout way they've had to go to make, like instead of, Wanda starting as a main character, she's like evolved into that role. So then it feels like when she's wearing that, it exudes that energy. Whereas like, who knows, like, did she say that in an interview? Elizabeth Olsen say something about like she maybe wouldn't have felt like good in a costume right at the start, because I feel like in Age of Ultron at the end when she shows up in that costume, like it's fine, but it's like it seemed a little uncomfortable, and so it's like I like that in the MCU nobody's embarrassed of what they're wearing.
Yeah. I feel like they have the actors that are playing them, they have to have like that choice. Like they want to feel comfortable in their suits.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, I guess Chris Evans in his first Cap costume, like that cowl, like he hated it. He was just like, how did I make a movie in this thing? But then like now, like there's ear holes for him. So like now he's like, oh, okay, we're good.
Yep. and that's funny because like another favorite character of mine is Psylocke. And so she's been in 2 Fox movies, played by 2 different actresses. And of course...
Olivia Munn played her, right?
Correct.
But then where was she in a different one?
Buried behind everybody else. And so she was actually in X-Men 3, Last Stand.
Oh.
She was one of the Morlocks. So she was portrayed by, I can't remember the woman's name, but she's basically a bit role. And the only identifying factor is that she's got a purple streak in her hair and she has a red thing over her eye, which is a callback to Crimson Dawn in the books. But like with Olivia Munn's outfit, for instance, you know, like Psylocke, you know, if you're a comic book fan from the 90s, you know what she looks like. Jim Lee era. Jim Lee's another huge guy. I love him so much. But he drew her in the Japanese, gosh, this is like, not to derail so hard, but Psylocke has two bodies, and she's got this ninja outfit, skin tight. You could imagine it might be made of latex if you really wanted it to be. But you know, the funny thing is that despite how much of her skin is showing, she is actually covered on the torso. You know, she's just, it's her arms and her thighs that are exposed. But then when they brought her in for the X-Men film with Olivia Munn, who was the director? Was it Bryan Singer still?
It was.
Yeah. Yes, and so they did this thing where they chopped out part of her cleavage plate. And so,
I didn't even notice that. I mean, I didn't see it, but like from the trailer, I didn't even remember that.
Oh, so you didn't watch the movie?
No, I haven't seen any X-Men since First Class.
It's a better one, but it's still X-Men. I've got thoughts about X-Men. But yeah, so they did this thing with her costume where they just quite literally just cut out the boob window, and then they went another step to add something underneath it, so it almost framed it. And I don't think she had a problem with it, but you know, like as a fan, I was just like, was that really necessary? Like, did you really have to do that? And so I'm glad that, I mean, as far as we know that, you know, the women in the MCU haven't had to deal with that kind of thing because, yeah, you know, sexism in pop culture strikes again. But yeah, no, I think, but among all of Wanda's outfits, I do, like I mentioned this in the Captain America episode, I love the one at the end of Civil War. I always get it confused where she has that quick cameo. Is it Civil War?
Age of Ultron?
Oh, it's Age of Ultron because Scarlet was pregnant in that one. That's how I remember.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they manipulated her stomach out. But so she had that quick cameo and like the beautiful hair and
her hair was lighter.
It was a little lighter, but not too crazy. It was still brunette, and it's like tiny bit different than the outfit she inevitably has in Civil War.
Yeah,
which is fine too. But you know, this last one is gorgeous. And shout out to this artist Kevin Wada, who is among, you know, the greats right now. He's an incredible watercolorist, and so he's done a lot of like recreations or reformatting of costumes, and so he designed one of Wanda's newest outfits, which is a crown very similar to the one that she has in the show, where it's just kind of like a headpiece, and it's very simple. And it kind of calls back to the cultural references, you know, of not Sokovia, but of Transia and all that stuff. And she's got a cape, and she has like a bodice. It's like a one-colored bodice, and then she wears, I think she has like pants or something. But it's so elegant, and it's so like such a mature look for Wanda as a character. Like if you compare it to, you know, this weird, you know, swimsuit looking thing that she had at one point, and then, you know, like this the gloves and the full-on cape thing. She's definitely her own woman, her own character now, and I kind of love that they empowered her in that way visually.
Well, yeah, again, I feel like it's a confidence thing, and I feel like somebody like Wanda in this outfit is like, I would wear this, and it's not just this thing just for our, you know, again, for like the male, you know, for our entertainment. It's like within that world, this character would wear this.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
It's like she might not have felt confident to wear like a crown before.
Exactly.
But then you think like with the cape thing, it's like, maybe by the opening of Doctor Strange of Multiverse of Madness, it's like now that she's been rocking her after, she's like, this could really use a little something more, and then she.
Or after hanging out with Doctor Strange for a bit, she was like, maybe I want a cape too.
She's like, and then cape comes out. Oh gosh, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, to me, it's. I think that's what makes a great costume in these kind of movies is that, like, I just want to believe that character is choosing to wear that.
It's not just like there's purpose. It's not just there. There's purpose in it.
For sure. Yeah. And so next on my list, love interests. How familiar are you guys with anything beyond Vision?
Oh, I was literally just going to say that. There's one person I know.
But I mean, you know...
I forget who she hooks up with. Because there's one other major... not Winter Soldier. That's Nat and Bucky.
Nat and Bucky.
Oh, God. I knew it first. I can't remember right now.
Well, Captain America is one.
Oh, really?
Captain America. Well, we talked about this in the Captain America.
Freaky.
Steve has quite a list
Look,
of ladies.
You eventually date a goth person at some point in your life, you know?
And so Captain America,
girl, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Captain America is one of them, and I explained in the Captain America episode that it was more or less a one-night stand, and then unfortunately it was around the time when Wanda lost all of her memories, and she just kind of reset. So she didn't even remember that encounter, but Steve remembered it in every detail. And he kind of like skirt chased her for a bit, and she was just like, well, whatever. Wonder Man, who was with her on the West Coast Avengers. And so we haven't yet seen Wonder Man in the MCU. I'm wondering if they'll bring him into anything. He's kind of like a Superman in a way, but not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in his own way. And so I don't know if there's room for a character like that, but his name has come up a couple of times. I think we talked about him in Cap. It might have been Cap.
Maybe, yeah.
Or
I've heard
Spider-Man.
there's been like speculations too. Like, is this like a hint at Wonder Man or whatever?
Yeah, and then Doctor Doom.
Well, that's who I was thinking.
Oh, is it Doctor Doom?
Yeah.
And so like during the whole amnesia state, Doctor Doom kind of took advantage of that situation.
Not a good hookup.
Again, like she's really had a tumultuous backstory, and so he kind of took advantage of it and kind of pulled a Magneto where he was like, this is how it is, and you're with me, and she's like, cool. And so they kind of ruled Latveria together, and we're doing things, like that she may have not done under her right mind. And
so it's like a Queen Sindel situation.
Yeah,
for
actually.
Mortal Kombat fans, because she was kind of brainwashed and married Shao Kahn, the main villain of the second
that's pretty accurate actually. That's scary.
Fantastic Four did get teased.
Yeah, I mean,
So
can
who
you
knows?
imagine if they kind of bring? It's so crazy. I hate saying this, but Quicksilver is also one of them. I'm so sorry. They're both
I think
making
we're getting
faces.
into Game of Thrones territory
They're
here.
both making
God.
faces, and so I hate it.
Wait,
but,
how does this happen?
Okay. Brace yourselves. Well, not brace yourselves. Breathe easy, because it took place in the Ultimate Universe. And so Ultimate Universe is not 616. It's completely different. It's the same universe that Miles Morales came from, unfortunately. So
He had to witness this.
he had to witness this in some capacity.
Cover your eyes, son. Miles has seen some shit.
Oh God, yeah. And so, it's all screwy all over the place. And so, unfortunately, in this particular universe, Quicksilver and Wanda had an incestuous relationship, and
They went there.
and they
Oh my
went there,
gosh.
and it's very implied. There's a fade to black. But you have to also understand that isn't even the most risque thing they did, because in the same universe, Tony and I believe Black Widow or the Wasp had a sex tape.
Oh, jeez. This is like the Edgelord universe.
It's
this is
so crazy.
Yeah.
And that was kind of an example of like them not retconning or anything, or not completely starting anew, but it was just, that's when like the alternate universe stuff started to really
got it.
become a thing, and they were introducing this whole other suite of characters that you already knew, but super different, or maybe too similar to what they used to be. So there's that, and I just had to make note of that because it's so good.
Well, also, I don't know if you want comments on your social being like, you forget the incestuous relationship part. No, stop, don't bring it up. We tried to ignore it, so let's just address it now.
Exactly.
And then people don't have to leave those kind of comments.
Thank you, Steven.
Because that's not a hill you want to die on.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
and
man.
then of course to the palate cleanse Vision, and so we finally get to Vision. And
yes, Vision, 100%, yes.
Vision is a big thing for her, and always will be for obvious reasons. But their relationship is not unlike you see on the screen, in that he's just this. You watched the way that their relationship evolves, like. He's a robot.
Yeah.
But he's a sentient being in that, he's trying to experience new things, and and it's like what Bruce said in one of the movies where he's like, you're part me, you're part Tony, you're part Ultron.
Part Jarvis,
yeah, and they're
Jarvis,
all talking to each other and learning from each other, and then that's when you get Vision. And so for Wanda to kind of be in this weird rut of like, no one understands me, I have these weird powers, I don't have my brother, my family is dead, and then finding a partner in a
Sentient
in a
being.
sentient robot being is like, Oh man, of all things, and I could see the criticism of some people being like, "How could she fall in love with a robot?" And in the books, like they refer to him as a toaster. They refer to him. She refers to him as a microwave. Like when she's mad at him, she's like, "Shut up, you microwave!"
Oh, no. Right.
And so they've got some stuff between them. But and then that's kind of like not to go too crazy, but that's why when they started showing the Hydra commercials in WandaVision, when they showed the first one was like a toaster.
It was a toaster.
I was like, are they making fun of Vision? Or is that just is there another Hydra related toaster story?
We know now because of what Kevin Feige said about how he wanted to involve Doctor Strange, but he ultimately nixed that idea.
Yeah.
The commercials were supposed to be messages from Doctor Strange originally.
See, we're all learning stuff.
But then now he was just like, no.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
But we saw like that Vision, that character Vision. Like I was rewatching was it Civil War, right? And he's trying to cook paprikash. Yeah. And he's just like, I don't really know what anything tastes like, so I'm only hoping this tastes good.
Oh my god! And then
spirits lifted.
Well, it's also too. It's this thing of like how we said earlier. It's like, and especially for somebody like me who, didn't know where anything was going, or the idea like, would the MCU be successful enough that they would ever eventually do a WandaVision show? And it was one of those things where it's like and they realized too. It's like, well, we only have like 5 or 10 minutes, like maybe 5 minutes out of these movies where they're the side characters. Like, so how do we develop a relationship where we can really only show like a couple minutes at a time? But I feel like they did it really well. And then and then in WandaVision, they were able to like go back and add layers to it, where it was like when you cut back to Civil War, then you because you're like, how do we go from like characters who are barely in these movies to all of a sudden being married and like love of their life? And then, but they did it in such a way where it was like they left you enough breadcrumbs. And then when they go back and explain more, you're like, okay, it all fits together. Of like how like, oh yeah, they were trapped in a house together for like months or whatever. So it makes sense that they would bond. Yeah. And and so it wasn't this thing of like, it didn't feel like an out of nowhere situation.
Yeah. Like it was implied. It was all implied.
Yeah. And she even says it, like when she's speaking to, I was going to say Chris Evans, when she's speaking to Steve on her bed, and then Viz just comes in through the wall and she's like, Viz, we talked about this. And it's like, okay, right there off the bat, you know that, oh God, he's done it like 6,
it's a great
12,
callback.
30
like,
times.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah, and so like there are those little things, and like you said, the breadcrumbs that they kind of leave that indicate that they have been, together and bonding and creating this relationship over time.
And these are two of the most powerful Avengers, like ever.
Yeah.
Two of the most powerful characters, and to not tell their story and flesh it out would be messed up. But I'm glad they did.
Yeah, and who knew that it was going to be that good? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I always go in kind of like, and I try to be as clean palated as possible. I try not to watch any spoilers or anything or read anything. And so going in, I was just like, this is different. But I also grew up on those old shows.
Yeah.
Like those were my jam. My dad always used to put Nick at Night on for me.
Yeah,
and so like I watched all of those shows, and immediately I was like, oh my gosh, it's Dick Van Dyke. Oh my gosh. And so I loved it. And then it was like Wanda and Vision at the same time. So I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'm in. And then like many people, like an episode or two, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what's going on, but I like it.
But the payoff was so incredible that it's just like, dang.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well done. And so like, I just wanted to give a quick shout out because I kept referencing it, but there's Vision's solo title in 2015 that was written by Tom King and drawn by Mike Del Mundo is such a great read. And honestly, if they do a series for Viz or something that expands on his story a little more, especially now that he's Vision 3.0 in some respects, that'd be kind of cool, because he basically manufactures his own family of robots. And so he's got his family, and then Wanda comes back in, and then that's
WandaVision season 2.
Yeah.
I hope so.
From his side.
Yeah,
I hope
it'd be
so.
so interesting. And so, Wanda comes back in, and they have a very... there's a deep issue, like, and the cover's beautiful. It's like one Vision, but there's like 8 Wandas surrounding him, and like it's the whole mental projection, and it's great. It's a great series. So all that said, where would you like to see this character go in the Marvel universe, in the MCU?
I think I don't know.
It's tough because as we know now, after WandaVision, she is definitely one of the most powerful heroes in the MCU. So her limits are definitely endless and limitless. I feel like she is gonna play like some sort of anti-hero at some point in Doctor Strange 2, but I think she flips that around at some point, where she goes and ends. That's very tough to say. Like I said, she seems unkillable. Like there's no way. Like maybe she gets like a Steve Rogers ending in some sort. Like is there good that she does for the world where like she's Captain Marvel, like because she has to do with different planets, that she have to take care of different multiverses.
Ooh,
I don't know.
That would be kind of cool.
That's pretty good.
Like she now she's like, because like obviously Doctor Strange like manage like keeps track of like different realities. So how do you?
Well, there's somebody like that in the Spider-Man universe. Her name is Madam Web, and she keeps track of all the spider people.
Oh,
And
interesting.
So, yeah, that would be.
I mean,
that'd be interesting.
So like Wanda's powers are, as we saw in the finale of WandaVision, her powers are just immense and huge.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I hope she does get like a nice ending. I don't know what these characters like. I don't know how these people's contracts look.
Yes,
So,
again,
you know
thinking
what I'm saying?
I was gonna just start talking about the practical side of things.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting because it is as far as like that practical side of things go. It's like with the main heroes, it's very like clear that like they have limited time, and so because they're the star of the movies, they build the arcs in.
Yeah.
But for the side characters, it's like, what are they gonna? Are they just gonna be side characters forever, or is like this gonna be a situation where like, I mean, especially maybe because of the success of WandaVision. So it's like there's like maybe she could set a precedent for what they do with all the side characters, which is like she has a show, she gets to co-star in a movie, and then she gets her own movie, and then they maybe do like a trilogy of Scarlet Witch movies, and then she's done.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna be interesting to see characters like, well, I mean, but that's exactly what happened to Sam Wilson.
Yeah.
He went from side character to getting a show to like co-starring in a show, co-lead, and then now he's getting his own movie.
Yeah.
So it's like, is that going to be the model where, because again, the practical reality of the side characters are promoted to leads, but then they aren't going to be like, I just don't see them like being around forever.
Yeah.
They can't. Yeah.
Because before they had like a hinted at story, but now that we've seen a real story for Wanda, it doesn't make sense for her to go back to being like a side player.
Yeah, it's like also how long do these actors, you got to think about like the actor side of it. How long do they want to play these characters?
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
I mean, like we talked about Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine for 20 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's got to be a sweet gig if you're like just paid to come in for a couple days a week.
It's also
like,
true.
And yeah, like I just don't see that, because I mean, you think about how much screen time like Elizabeth Olsen had like in Age of Ultron or Civil War. Like I don't see like. There's a difference between like a character coming in, like I feel like with like Scarlett Johansson, like every time she's in a movie, because she's like a main character, it's like weird that she's a main character who hasn't had her own movie until now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But like Scarlet Witch was a side character, and then they finally developed her. So I don't see them going back to not developing her anymore.
Right.
So it's like if she is a co-star in movies or does show up in movies, it has to be for a reason.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
that's the part where I'm like, it almost depends on what happens after Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
Like, does she show up does she end as like being a hero again and like part of the team, or are they gonna continue to explore her journey more? Which I mean, is, because she is my favorite superhero, it would be cool if they gave her own movies after.
Yeah. After Doctor
Because
Strange.
it feels weird if she went down to the same level of screen time as she did like in Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
True.
Unless it
Yeah.
was for like a very specific reason,
Yeah.
like where she shows like again, like if again, I can't think of like any comic situations that I like people have referenced, but it's like even like you were saying that like Natasha and Bucky have a relationship. So it's like if they made another Black Widow movie, like bringing in Bucky then makes sense to have him be in only part of it.
I want. I say this to Geoffrey all the time. I'm like, you know what? Black Widow, great. I just want a 2-second flashback. It can be a flicker on the screen of her and Bucky back in the day. as spies, kissing. I don't care. I just want them to know that they were together. I want to know, and it be like confirmed that they knew each other. Like they did in the books. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's again, and I say this all the time, once we finally get into a Bucky episode, I mean, they have such a rich background and backstory that it's almost a crime to not reflect that in some capacity, especially for a studio that seems to be doing all of these like fan favors, you know, how could you overlook that of all things, you know, and is Natasha so different in the MCU that's not even an option to them. And so I guess we'll find out in July. Yeah.
Well, and again, I guess my big question does Wanda have a relationship with another MCU hero that is like the equivalent of like what they did with Tony Stark in the first Spider-Man, or what they're possibly doing with Doctor Strange in the next Spider-Man?
I don't know.
Because the only person I can think that she has a relationship with, because is her and Hawkeye.
I was gonna say Hawkeye.
Oh yes,
because the whole
because they share the same grief, they share the same pain.
Yeah.
Because at the end of Endgame, they like he lost Nat, she lost Viz, so like they connected on that, and I was just like, oh, that's interesting that they included that at the end of Endgame.
He essentially made her an Avenger.
Yes.
That's true.
Yeah,
yes.
He's the scene of like you can go out there, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right, and I think somebody on Twitter recently was talking about how underrated people have talked about that relationship. So maybe like what if there's a version where like, you know, after the Hawkeye series, it's maybe not even with like through Hawkeye she gets a relationship with Kate Bishop or something. Like, is that something that happened in the comics? Like, I don't know, but like that would be.
Oh yeah, he also retrieves her in Civil War.
And she like even across the you're pulling your punches, like that whole thing. Like they have this
very underrated. Wow, now I think that's
it's absolutely underrated. Yeah. And it doesn't exist in the books at all, but you know, at least
oh, interesting. Okay.
I mean, but they were on the West Coast Avengers together.
Oh wow.
But also this Wanda they were the same age essentially, whereas MCU Wanda is like a good 10 years younger, and so they've changed the dynamic a little, but yeah, that's an interesting one. Oh, and you know, speaking of, before I go too far, I just want to make note that question was thanks to Patreon patron Ariel, who's a big fan. So thank you, Ariel, for that question. So how did you like the treatment of the accent?
I mean, they made fun of it by the time they got to WandaVision.
Yeah, it was,
But I mean, I have, you know, friends who, you know, were born not in the US or whatever, and it's, you know, I mean, I like the idea of like learning English from television. Like that stuff felt very real to me. Yeah. I mean, I'm not somebody who's experienced that personally, but same. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where I just think, I think it was, you know, I think it's better to just not make somebody do a fake accent, you know, so I was fine with it.
Yeah. And I feel like that's why they didn't have it present for a long time, technically, because they were trying to force her into speaking with that kind of slighted accent, because it just seems so unnatural, or at least people maybe had complaining. But I do appreciate the fact that they tied it back and that she was like just recessing herself because she had been on the run and all that.
After hearing it in Age of Ultron and you hear her next thing, you're like, where did it go?
Yeah.
Where did it go? But I mean, also, I'm trying to see this from an actor standpoint. It's a non-existent country. You're trying to like, it's like a Eastern European, right? I
Russian-y kind of thing.
Yeah. So, and trying to keep that for like multiple movies across the board.
And consistently.
It's pretty hard. You're definitely you're gonna lose it the more takes you do. It's just coming from straight up just like a movie aspect. But I did like in WandaVision where she came out of that bubble for the first time. It was there.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, but like it was good enough to where it's like, oh okay, it's still there. Like it's still part of her is there, and I appreciated that a lot.
Absolutely, because like the minute she even dropped a syllable, and I was like, oh, that was the Sokovian accent coming out. I knew that immediately. That was the tone of the scene was changing course completely, and we were starting to see the Wanda come out. And I was like, oh, okay, it's real. But you know, I mean, not to dive too deep into this particular thing, but you know, there is the conversation of, you know, she's been whitewashed a bit from the comic books because she's supposed to be from Eastern Europe, and you know, they come from a very specific peoples, and so you know, there I don't know if either of you have like a dream cast for her in particular, if not for Elizabeth, but there are two in particular that I wanted to shout out because, Marvel fandom, we go every which way. We loved Lizzie, but also there are a few people who would have liked to see somebody that maybe fit that kind of character type better. And so there are two actresses, one named Mihaela Dragan, and another one named Hiba Abuk, and they're both gorgeous women. And I'm not familiar with their work at all, but they seem to be like the standout females who could have played Wanda in a great way, and that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's like we get down to oh my god, what's his name from The Mummy? Oded Fehr.
Oh yes.
Like people were saying, like he would have been a great Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Again, as far as whitewashing a role and stuff like that.
And then as of recently, like the comments that Kevin Feige made about casting the Ancient One with Tilda Swinton are coming back, and how much he regrets not casting an Asian person for the role, because. And that's one of the situations where I totally get it. Like, he didn't want to tokenize the Asian people by casting them in a role that, was so typically Asian and to the point of it's just tasteless. But I get how he's revisiting the idea and being like, oh, you know what? I kind of wish it would have been proper to do that. And
or at least ask somebody.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, at least they're doing Shang-Chi, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, imagine
I know 10 years ago it would have been like a full white.
Oh, God.
They would have been horrible.
Yeah, it would have been bad.
But
so all that said, I wanted to. Oh, wait, did you have an idea of who you?
I was going to ask you, like, do you have a list of people that were in the?
Yeah, well, there's no list, but there are two people in particular, and so. I don't believe she actually auditioned, but she was used for the concept art, and she does know that she was optioned for the role.
Okay.
But they just didn't actually move forward with her. But Saoirse Ronan.
Okay.
So and she's incredible. Like
for Wanda.
For Wanda, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
She's an incredible actress, and so that would have been interesting to see. And then the other candidate who actually tested against Lizzie. Is Sasha Peter Schaefer from Pretty Little Liars. I don't watch the show.
I don't watch the show either.
But yeah, apparently she auditioned and she was up against Elizabeth and didn't get it. Yeah, so those are the only two.
Well, I was just going to say regarding the accent thing, I think it was easier to do the accent when this character only had a scene or two.
Yeah.
But to try and, as her role grew across the MCU, it's like... Well, yeah, it's kind of the same reason why, this is kind of a similar example, but different, which is for The Hobbit, they de-aged Ian Holm and Elijah Wood because they were in two scenes, but they didn't de-age Ian McKellen because he was one of the stars of the movie. And so they we're not going to de-age this character for an entire 3 movies, 12 hours, it's it was just more of a practical reason. And so I think with WandaVision, it's partially if somebody's been, trying to learn English or trying to or purposely trying to remove their accent, because I also have friends who it's a point of pride. So they're not trying to cover up their accent, or whatever. Because, so there's different reasons for that. But I think there was also a practical reality of Elizabeth Olsen can do an accent for 2 scenes.
Yeah.
But to try and commit to doing that for a whole show, it's now it just kind of, now it's more attention is on it, and so that it's is this worth it? You know?
And you also have to she's living in America now, so you have to just assume that she's picking up on, but she also grew up on the American TV shows too, so maybe she doesn't want to lose it, like you said, she doesn't want to lose that accent, but her English is getting better, her inflection is getting better throughout the show and movies.
And so how many years would you say that Wanda has been part of the Avengers? Because you've Bucky even gave a time frame. He's I just went from fight to fight for 9 years.
Well, Age of Ultron came out in 2015.
Yeah.
So I guess 2015 to 2023.
Right? Yeah, it was Endgame 2023.
Yeah. So it's been almost a decade.
Yeah. Oh my God.
She's been in America for a long time now.
Yeah.
So then now that my question is she going to have the accent in Doctor Strange?
Exactly.
The Multiverse of Madness?
And I kind of want to see it. I would like to see that. I don't know that
Doctor Strange is
hold on.
I guess you've been off the wagon a while because last time I saw you, you spoke perfect English.
It's so
She's like, no, it's point of pride. Sorry,
No.
I didn't do the accent.
Nice.
I had to try it once.
Oh, God.
Did they even interact in Endgame? No, not really.
No.
They just brought him back, but
Not even in Wakanda.
that's about it.
In Infinity War?
No, nothing.
No, Doctor Strange was on Earth.
He was on Earth.
Wait, where was
wait,
Wanda?
No,
I'm sorry, it's all Earth. I'm sorry.
He was in the.
He was in New York.
Oh, and then he
was
went
in
off
New
to
York,
space.
and then
He was in space.
So he never saw, because Wanda was on the campus the whole time. Or no, she went to.
I'm confused.
She went to in Infinity War. She went to
Wakanda. She was in
She
Wakanda.
was in Wakanda.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
With
and
Viz.
he was in he was with Tony on
Yes, and
Titan,
he was on
Titan.
the spaceship with the
the Guardians.
No,
Oh,
not
so-
the Guardians. The Thanos' children.
Gamora and Nebula.
No.
Oh,
Well, them two.
the
The Black Order.
The Black Order. Yeah.
Yes. So they've never had an interaction.
Yeah, they didn't have.
so
an
that'll be
interaction.
interesting. That like it's characters.
Unless it was in the Soul World.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'll be cool. I hope
Mm-hmm.
because to me, like the idea of like. Again, I think Wanda and Vision, it's like you're building a relationship that is like partially off screen.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there'll be moments where it's like you can tell that Doctor Strange and Wanda have interacted before. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I hope they do that. I hope it's not like
Yeah.
it's not that dumb situation where like Poe Dameron introduces himself to Rey at the end of Last Jedi, which I think was like only done because Colin Trevorrow asked for that, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, before he was booted off of Star Wars.
No.
But it's like you don't need to show the meeting. Like
Yeah.
I would have assumed that they had met,
Had met at
any
some point.
You know,
they
like
fought that big battle together.
yeah, no, like I don't need to like I feel like sometimes nerd culture like we need to see everything like all the literal details.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
guys, like things happen off screen. Like
Yeah.
why
I
can't
know, yeah, I
like
don't
people
like
go to
that.
the bathroom off screen? Like why do you need to have every introduction be shown on
Exactly.
screen?
Yeah, I don't like that.
Exactly. Okay, well, I think that kind of, that's all I have written down.
It's a great note to end.
So, there's so much, but there's so much to her. Like we didn't even cover like the magic elements and her powers too deeply, but I guess before we end, we can touch on that. And so it, like Geoffrey said, she's essentially like one of the most powerful people in the Marvel universe, if not, like
Of all
if not
time.
the, yeah. And it's hard to say because like you have someone like Captain Marvel who is incredibly powerful,
Yeah,
and
all
in
their-
the MCU she's got a literal stone.
Their
like,
powers have come from
from
the Infinity Stone.
Exactly.
Both of their powers.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah. What
there's
is the
no
end?
there's no other character
Yeah.
that I'm aware of, right? Mm-hmm. That didn't get their powers from the Infinity Stone, right?
Captain
Yeah.
Marvel and Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, and then Viz, but that's not a thing
Black
anymore.
Panther's powerful, but it's not from a stone.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
I think
I think
Of course, Peter Quill can hold a stone, but he can't do anything with it.
he's only half Terran.
he's only half Terran. Well, now he's full Terran again. But yeah, like no, and I guess that's kind of almost the perfect scenario for characters like the X-Men to come in,
Yeah.
because they're just a whole suite of other semi-natural prowess and power ratings, because that's all innate with them technically.
And now Wanda knows how to use her powers.
Exactly, and it's
For
terrifying.
the last, was it like now it's been like 6 years? She's never known how to use her powers. She's just like, oh, this is
Yeah.
coming out of me. I
Yeah.
can do this. Cool.
Yeah.
But now she's like,
Yeah, especially full on creating like a living
Reality.
reality of, and when they started to unfold the whole fact that these people were conscious within themselves, but still
she took
doing,
over
yeah,
a whole town.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Demented.
Yeah, and the fact that they were knowledgeable, and that the teardrops and like they
Sad.
and it's
actually
sad.
very
yeah,
sad.
and so that's kind of, it's just and I think that's just like a nugget of the power that we're going to see from her in
Mm-hmm.
Doctor Strange, which is again terrifying.
I hope they give her some fun visuals, more like, because so far it's been more like red energy and it's been more like internal, but like I want to have like the the Thanos and Doctor Strange fight, like that kind of stuff. I want her
yes.
I want them to make her powers more fun and showy, because I feel like that, like, yeah, it's like she deserves to have fun too, you know, in that sense, where
for
it's
sure.
like let's give her some warping stuff where she like
Yeah.
I don't know, turns people into cubes or whatever, you know, like
yeah. Well, one of the iconic drawings from the House of M series is like, you know, her just essentially pixelating and breaking up so like a Tetris block, and she's just floating away, and you know, and that's like immediately after she says the no more mutants thing. You know,
I mean, if they gave the first Doctor Strange like those visual effects from that first Doctor Strange, and it's only enhanced in the second one, and then you combine Wanda's powers with Doctor Strange's. I mean,
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. I know Marvel's CG budget is through the roof, so I know they can do it.
Bring it. Let's see it. I want to see it. So yeah, I mean that's more or less our episode on Scarlet Witch. So I mean, as always, thanks for listening. Steven, do you want to plug anything in particular?
Sure, I want to plug things, but I do want to play this thing for you because I think you'll appreciate it. Okay. Which is, so during the run-up to Civil War, they had like whose side are you on and all that stuff. And if you tweeted at the account, you had different actors from the movie like basically make a video and respond to you.
God.
Do you remember this
I do remember this promo tour.
Well, someone...
Wait, so my internet is not working here.
Do you want to get on the Wi-Fi?
Yes, let me get on the Wi-Fi really quick so I can play this for you because I think it'll be worth it. Oh wait, I saved it in my folder. I didn't. Now I just wanted your Wi-Fi password. So
sorry, I should have given that to you at the top of the show.
So let's see. Here we go.
Steven, way to go, Team Cap.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
He got one.
I got
from her too.
Elizabeth Olsen to say my name and tell me good job, Team Cap.
Oh, I love her.
How jealous are you?
I am incredibly.
But I think too, like that was like another little element of like, you know, starting to get into this character and like just have, you know, what Civil War was 2017?
2016. Yep.
Like, so to have like, okay, this character is intriguing in Ultron or like End of Winter Soldier, Ultron. And then in Civil War, like there was just a lot of little things along the way that made me love the character of Wanda. So to have the Elizabeth Olsen thing, and then WandaVision comes out, and it's just like, oh my god, I still have this on my phone. Like,
it's amazing.
So happy I have this because like at the time I was just like, how did they do that? Did they just make those actors like say?
I know. Yeah. I remember that promo tour. I was just like, are they just pumping this out like right now? Like
how are they
just
doing
sitting in a room and just waiting for tweets to come in?
Yeah.
Well, because somebody else, because I posted that recently, like when WandaVision came out, and so some other people on social were like posting theirs, and like I don't think it was some magic of like just changing the name out. Like I feel like I saw another one of Elizabeth Olsen, and it was like, you know, it was like, Jared doing great, Team K. Like it was like a little different.
It was personalized.
Like,
it was definitely personalized
to some degree.
Yeah, so I wonder if they just had like, here's a list of names, and then here's the rest of the sentence, and like you're just gonna spend an hour and just go through all the names because like some people sent some stuff of Sebastian Stan doing it and stuff, and it's just like
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh man, good times.
So that was another like since I was a guest today, I was like I have to show that to you because like it just was like so cool. And then again I mean I was already really into that character at the time, so that was really cool. Like, you know, again because it was randomized. Yeah. And then when WandaVision came out, I was like, oh well, the fact that I had that felt so good. But yeah, no, thank you both for having me on. This was such a blast.
It was great to have you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you can just listen, see Jurassic Right, everything but the movie, a Star Wars Book Club podcast, the Purrrcast. Diana was on an episode, and at Stephen Ray Morris and all the things.
Stephen Ray Morris.
We will put all of his podcast channels and social channels
for the people who don't know him for some reason. But you know, I made a joke on with a couple of friends, and that it was kind of funny that you were going to be a guest on this podcast because now I can't hear the Agatha All Along song without putting your name instead because now it's like it was Stephen Ray all along.
Oh yeah, you got to add the Ray part, because I was like, how do I make that work with the thing?
But yeah, no, thank you, Stephen. We appreciate you coming on with us, and so follow us on social at SDRKCNTRST. Yeah. If you like what you hear, please become a Patreon and support our show. Geoffrey and I do this all by ourselves, soup to nuts. So we would love your support in one form or another. Or if you would like, just follow us on social.
Thanks again, guys, for listening, and we will see you in the next one.
The next one, which we haven't decided yet. So maybe we'll let Steven decide.
Wait, but wasn't it Hawkeye because you had the boating?
No, well, we're gonna restart that. Like maybe another episode I'll have him pull another name, but for now we don't have a set character.
If our special guest, if you want to just throw
get
someone
the
out
honors.
that you want to hear,
that's a lot of pressure. Oh gosh, pulling my Avengers in a hat, pulling.
Oh gosh.
Oh yeah.
Don't say it.
War Machine? I don't know.
Oh, God. Okay, well we'll keep Rhodey on the docket.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got some interesting.
He's
stories.
Definitely, because 2 actors have played him in the MCU. So
he's getting his own show.
And he's getting his own show.
A lot of setup for that.
And he was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yes, he was.
He was.
Okay,
wow.
well, we'll consider. We'll consider high consideration because that's a pretty good one.
That is a good one.
So we'll see.
Throwing it in
in
the hat.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Well, we can settle on that much at least.
All right. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.
You took everything from me.
I don't even know who you are.
You will.